All right.
There you go.
Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Dvaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandhu Jagatpate. Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe, Vrindavaneshwari. Vishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hare Priya. Apavitra Pavitru Va, Sarvavastha Gato Viva. Ya Smaret Pundarika Ksham, Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchi. Whether one is pure or impure, if one remembers the Lord with the lotus eyes, then one becomes, by dint of bringing that by remembrance, which is manifesting a memory, which is manifesting a samskara, which is manifesting, in this case, a samskara of Bhagavan, which is a samskara like all samskaras that come from the outside. And where does the Ishvara samskara comes from? The descriptions that we read about in the text. So we read about them and they enter the eyes and they sit in the mind, and they're samskaras, so they can be recalled to memory. So whether one is pure or impure, sarvavasta gato piva, whatever state one finds oneself in, my friends, pure, and we're all a bit mixed and a bit up and down, aren't we? We have our saintly moments, we have our not so good moments. So whatever state we find ourselves in, it's just the play of the gunas. It's just karma and the gunas. It's nothing to do with the atma. Whatever that state is, if we remember the Lord with the lotus eyes, we summon up the samskaras in our chitta that are connected to our beloved Bhagavans, whatever form he comes to us, whether you think you're Bhagavan or you think you're not, whatever that may be. If we bring that Bhagavan to mind, sa bhaya vyantara shuchihi, by bringing that divine presence into the mind, it's impossible for it to be impure, because there is no impurity where there is Ishvara. It's like there is no darkness where is the sun. It's a metaphysical impossibility. Beautiful verse. Whether you're pure or impure, whatever state you find yourself in, if you remember the Lord with the lotus eyes, which means any form of Ishvara or Ishvari, then we become pure inside and outside. All right, on we go with our Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. We got it up to Tulsi. Tulsi is a big deal for the Vaishnavas. And as I said last week, certain things are, most of this is generic bhakti, living in a holy place. So, Vaishnavas want to live in the holy places associated with Vishnu, like Ayodhya with Ram, Vrindavan with Krishna, and places like that. And Shaivas want to live in places associated with Shiva, like Varanasi. That's the big Shiva, the main Shiva center in India. And this, likewise, the Shakta traditions. So those are all generic. Many of the things we've studied, we're now on number 52, we're on 53. But Tulsi is very specifically Vaishnav. So the Shaivas would not necessarily wouldn't follow this particular item, number 53 out of the 64. So here we are, and that's serving Tulsi, quoting the Skanda Purana, the Shaiva Purana. And Tulsi is sometimes called sacred basil because it's related to the basil plant. Very, very temperamental. I had them growing beautifully all summer, and I must have had about 25 of them, bought beautiful, huge pots, brought them all inside, brought lights, the whole thing. And the last one died just 3 weeks ago. So Vaishnavas will always, well, it's not always, but some Vaishnavas, if they have Tulsi in it and she dies, then they will berate themselves and think they haven't taken good care. But the great goddess, like Ganga is a goddess and a river, so Tulsi is a goddess and a great devotee of one of the Sakis, one of Krishna's intimate gopis, a beloved, and she also has the form of a plant. So very temperamental. But then you put a leaf on whenever you eat food. You put a leaf on every item of food, and so and then of course if you don't have Tulsi, what do? Then you touch the food with a Tulsi stick. So there's all these rules which are not here. These are the 64. Remember, there's 9 big rules of bhakti from the 9 sort of primary rules of bhakti. Then now this is 64, but all of these rules have sub rules and sub rules, and you know how it is with Indian traditions. They're sort of schematized endlessly. So what happens if you don't have Tulsi? Well, you can touch it with a Tulsi stick. Let's say you're in the middle of winter in, Alaska. Okay, Tulsi stick. Well, what happens if you don't have a Tulsi stick? Well, then you offer it in your mind. So there's there's always these provisions. There's always ways of getting around the rules, reflecting, and basically, as long as your intention is pure, there's a way you could do all of these things, even if you have nothing. You could be sitting in the desert, and you can do the whole thing in the mind, actually. So, the service to Tulsi, I do obeisance to Tulsi. Seeing it destroys all sins, right? So Vaishnavas circumambulate Tulsi 3 times in the day. They have a plant in the house, in a very special place. They walk around it and they water it and they chant Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmahatyadikani Cha. That I forget it now, but that Tulsi removes all sins, even the killing of a Brahmana. I bet the Brahmanas didn't like that. They weren't so happy about that one. But so it's considered to be very purifying, the worship of Tulsi. All right. Touching it purifies the body. Bowing to it drives away all diseases. Sprinkling it with water removes the fear of death. Planting it brings one into close contact with Lord Krishna.
You want to say anything about the water?
And I will have to, I did actually mute everybody upon entry. I'm not quite sure why that didn't work. Oh, I guess I have to do it every time folks enter. Let's do that again then. Participants, more, mute. Why are we still hearing that?
I don't think that works, Edwin G.
Can everybody mute themselves kindly? There we go. Okay. So where were we? We were on Tulsi. And another verse: those who are devoted to the goddess, right? She's also a person, a being, divine being. The Tulsi, day after day in these 9 ways, right? Hearing about it, planting it, serving it, praise it, all of those. Dwell in the abode of Hari for billions of eons, which I'm not quite sure why I would say that, because if you get to the abode of Hari, you never come back, so you would stay there eternally. So I'm going to take that rhetorically. Right, 54th item of the 64, serving the scriptures. That's what we are doing, my friends. Krishna even says in the Gita, those who study this text have worshipped me with the yajna, with the yajna, the jñāna, what does he say? The jñāna yajna, the sacrifice of knowledge. We're sacrificing our minds for 2 hours. And in this way, serving the scripture. So very powerful. And thank you all for this opportunity. I actually really look forward to Friday. I mean, I'm honored to teach, students, Rutgers students. It's a little bit different. It's a different sort of thing. You're planting seeds where there may not be any, but you all are serious practitioners or seriously aspiring practitioners. We're all aspiring practitioners. Maybe we should be a bit more humble about how we phrase that. So it's a little bit of a different bhav. We have a different mood. So I thank you for, creating this opportunity that we do this. So serving the scriptures. Scriptures here refers to books that teach about devotion to Krishna. Obviously, this is a Krishna tradition. Shiva would be, you'd plug in Shiva there and the goddess and so forth. But Rupa isn't a staunch Krishnaite. And he loves the Skanda Purana. We also have to remember, that in the 16th century, someone like Rupa would not have had access. It's unlikely he would have had access to all 18 Puranas. Maybe he did. There would have been maybe collections here and there and, centers of learning, Varanasi, and probably Vrindavan where he was. But Vrindavan, it hadn't been built yet. The holy place of Vrindavan hadn't been built yet. So Chaitanya sends Rupa and the 6 Goswamis to Vrindavan to establish the holy places. So those huge temples that we now see, the 6 main temples of Vrindavan, each one associated with one of the 6 Goswamis, they were either under construction or hadn't been built at the point that Rupa's writing this. It wouldn't have been built in his lifetime. They might be enormous. And they would have got the Maharajas of Rajasthan, all pious Krishna bhaktas, especially the Maharaj of Jaipur, who was in command of the Mughal army. And that way he was able to give protection to the Vrindavan Bhaktas by being in command of the Islamic armies. That was Maharaj Jai Singh. And as a matter of fact, a number of the Vrindavan deities are in Jaipur. They were given protection. In fact, in the king's palace, you go to Jaipur, you go to the palace, and you go to Govinda Dev, the king built a temple in his own palace. And right so that when he from his bedroom, on his balcony, he can look right down and have darshan. Such was his devotion. But anyway, so why did I say all that? So scriptures here. So how do we just take that vritti? So Rupa, Krishna, and Vrindavan hadn't been built. All right. There's another missing link there. So Skanda Purana. Blessed in this world are those who listen to and study Vaishnava scriptures. Krishna is very pleased with them. And obviously Shiva will be very pleased with those who study the Shaiva scriptures and the Shaktas. So I don't have to keep saying that, all right? I want to say that because I want to be inclusivistic, and don't want anyone with other Ishvara orientations to feel, but this is a Krishna text, and I will periodically say that, but bear in mind that you can plug in your Ishta Devata, the Lord of your heart. Okay. Those people who worship Vaishnava scriptures in their homes are freed from all sins and are honored by the gods. This is the Skanda Purana, right? He's substantiating the verse from the Skanda, and it's going to be 2 or 3 verses from the Skanda. Honored. In the place where Vaishnava scriptures are written, which will be Rupa himself writing right there in Vrindavan, there dwells Lord Narayana himself, because the scriptures are an incarnation. They're called Shastra Avatara. There's different kinds of avatars. Mantra is an avatara, sonic avatara. The deity in the temple is Murti Avatara. So there's Shastra Avatara, it's divine presence. So it's not just a jnana practice, it's a bhakti practice, because you're absorbing the mind in Ishvara in the form of Shastra. And in the 12th canto of the Bhagavata, the Sri Bhagavata is the very essence of all the Vedanta literature. See, the Bhagavata is, its opening verses, present Vyas as writing the Bhagavatam as the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge. And Vyas, of course, is the composer of the Vedanta Sutra. So that same Vyas who composed the Vedanta Sutra, the tradition, obviously historians would not necessarily accept this. I'm speaking from the place of tradition now, not from this workshop. Generally speaking, occasionally I'll say, well, scholars say this, that, and the other. For the most part, I'm speaking from a place of tradition now, but be aware, critical scholars, historians would say something else. So the Bhagavatam is written by Vyasa, and he has an existential dilemma, the beginning of the Bhagavatam. And he's morose. So his guru Narad comes down. Why are you morose? I don't know. He doesn't know. Vyasa says, Narad says, well, Vyasa says, well, I've written everything. I took the one Veda, divided it into 4. I compiled the Mahabharata, compiled all the Puranas. I've written so many things, but somehow my heart is incomplete, despite this massive output of moksha, spiritual knowledge. And Narada said, well, it's because you haven't described the Leelas of Sri Krishna. Your heart remains still unfulfilled. So then he writes the Bhagavata Purana. So that's how the Purana frames itself, presents itself, and it calls itself the Galitam Phalam, the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree. The Vedas is a tree, all these scriptures, all these knowledge systems, the fruit of it all is the Bhagavatam. So with that all said, you can understand how this would be, the same text would make a statement like this. So Sri Bhagavatam is the very essence of all the Vedanta literature. One who has enjoyed the nectar of its rasa. Where's the rasa, my friends? The 10th book. Why the 10th book? That's where Sri Krishna performs his leelas. And what's that got to do with rasa? Because the leelas are so sweet that bhaktas just fall in love with Krishna. And what happens when they fall in love with Krishna, as we'll find out once we pass over. But Vaidhi, they experience rasa. What's rasa? It's the bhakti sort of parallel to Ananda of the moksha tradition, Satchidananda. The experience, it's an experience, it's a taste. Rasa literally means taste. It's an experience that overwhelms the body, mind, the senses, and and some theologians will say is the very nature of the Atman itself. They would accept that the Atman is not just Satchidananda, but Satchidananda Prema. They'd add a fourth category to the very nature of the Atman itself. So one who has enjoyed the nectar of its rasa never has any desire for anything else. And we had all those verses about including moksha, including moksha, including moksha. So rasa is the taste, the experience of love of God, prema. So now we've got number 55, serving his Mathura. Mathura is Vrindavan. But Mathura is technically the place where Krishna was born. And nowadays it's, down the road from Vrindavan. In an auto rickshaw, you get there in 20 minutes. So it basically, there's a bit of countryside in between. But when the text talks about Mathura, it's talking about Mathura and Vrindavan and Govardhan Hill and all the places where Krishna performed his Leela. The Vraj Mandala, the circle of Vraj, of that circle where Krishna spent his childhood is 64 square kilometers. So it almost actually, it goes into Faridabad. It almost, basically almost the outskirts of Delhi. Is the 64 kosha, the 64 square, the mandala, which is where Krishna, where the theologians, when they retrace the various pastimes of Krishna, they retrace into this, what they consider to be a mandala, which is a mandala is like a circle, a lotus petaled circle. Mandalas mean different things, obviously, in different traditions. So one who leaves Mathura, so therefore the point is, if you want to be a Krishna Bhakta full time, completely and utterly, well, you go to the place that reminds you, the best place that's most conducive to remembrance of Bhagavan. So where would that be? Well, the place where Bhagavan did all his pastimes, his leelas. So then and part of the day of full-time bhaktas, those who renounce the world, because remember, bhaktas are not sitting in a cave nirodhering the mind. So what do? One thing they do is they spend a good part of the day, visiting the holy places and activating the leelas in their minds. Like, well, this happened here, and this is where Krishna, stole the clothes of the gopis, and this is where he killed the Kaliya snake monster, and so on. And there's, all kinds of practices where the whole 24-hour day is structured around the leelas of Krishna. That's a very kind of high esoteric form of Krishna Bhakti. But anyway, all of this taking place in the holy place of Mathura. So the Adi Varaha Purana, one who leaves Mathura desiring another place is a fool and wanders about in a worldly existence deluded by my illusion, Maya. So if you leave the place that's going to remind you of Krishna, well, where are you going to go then? You're going to go to some other place. Why are you going to do that? Because you want to remember other things. You want to seek other things. You're looking for other things. So then what's that then? That's Maya, seeking anything other than God. So if we leave a place that's maximally conducive to thinking of God, then what would be the reason for doing that? Well, of course, for us, it might be a visa or COVID restrictions nowadays, but you get the point. So, okay, the Brahmanda Purana. That perfection, which is extremely difficult to obtain. When I first went to India, we didn't need visas. I was British. And if you had a British passport, you didn't need a visa back in the 70s. And then Britland did something to India, and then they retaliated, and then we had to have visas, right, in the 80s. But beginning, there was no visas. I lived for 5 years, no visas in India when I first went there. So that perfection, which is extremely difficult to obtain by serving all the sacred places in the three worlds, because Bhagavan has leelas in other dimensions with the celestials, with different dimensions, not just our terrestrial one. But all of that, that perfection, which is difficult to obtain, consists of the highest bliss that comes from the mere touch of Mathura. And typically when you get to Vrindavan, if you're coming down, at least in the old days when I first went, you would roll around in the dust of Vrindavan. As soon as you crossed over the parameter of the, where that Vrindavan Dham is the term, without the R, not Dharma, but Dham, the abode of Bhagavan. Right, so that everybody knew where it started. There probably was some signpost or something, and you get out the car or whatever, and you roll in the dust. Why? Because that dust has been made sacred by the touch of the lotus feet of Bhagavan. Now, using the language of the tradition, the lotus feet of Bhagavan. So the mere touch of Mathura. Mathura gives the desired end, but we should be thinking Vrindavan rather than Mathura. Mathura is actually now a big commercial center, and Oh, there's lots of holy places, and of course, lots of controversies of where the actual birthplace was, because obviously wherever it was makes a lot of money from pilgrims. So there's several contested places. But Vrindavan is down the road, and that's the place where, because as soon as he was born, Krishna was carried from Mathura to Vrindavan the very instant he was born. He has a brief exchange with his parents. Then he tells his father to cross over the Yamuna and take him to Vrindavan. So within, I don't know, a few minutes, an hour, whatever, within, that night, that same night that he's born, he's carried over to Vrindavan. So Vrindavan really is the place, although he was born in Mathura, in the jail of his evil uncle, he is the Krishna of devotion is the Krishna of Vrindavan. Once he leaves and he goes to Dwarka and then the Mahabharata war, that Krishna, the Krishna of the Gita, is not the Krishna of devotion. It's not the Krishna that's worshipped, at least not, there are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's the Krishna of Vrindavan. Mathura gives the desired end to those people who hear about it, remember it, praise it, long for it, look at it, go to it, touch it, take refuge in it, and serve it. And I have to say, I like to think of a little bit of that applies to me. When I first went to Vrindavan and I lived there for 5 years, and I didn't mean to, it wasn't my intention to leave. I made a vow I'd never go back to the West. And then because of reasons I don't need to share right now, then I sort of did, and I always felt like it wasn't my intention. So I'm always thinking about Vrindavan. And I still have, obviously old friends there. So that's nice to read this. So I take some comfort in that. So all these are described in the Puranas, but are not cited here out of consideration for the length of the book. So this one he's not going to give. Remember, all of these other ones he's giving textual support for. And it's curious though, just this one he doesn't. But he says they're all described in the Puranas, and he doesn't want the book to be so too long. So for this particular one, he's not giving any illustrations, but of course he has. He's given 3 or 4 up there. He just doesn't want to give any more. So now moving on to 556, serving his Vaishnavas. This is huge in Krishna Bhakti, serving the bhaktas and not offending them. Worship of Vishnu is the highest form of all worship, but even higher than that, O goddess, is the worship of his devotees. Remember, in this tradition, the devotees are never God, never, never. But they're very dear to Bhagavan. They're pure, they're dedicated, pure bhaktas. So they've captured the heart of Bhagavan. And so therefore, by serving that level of bhakta, those who are really pure, and they're humble, not necessarily big, charismatic, silk-clad figures, not necessarily like that. They might be under the tree chanting their japa. Then this verse says it's higher than the worship of Hari because it pleases Hari. Why do we worship Hari? Because we want to please Hari. Why do we want to please Hari? So that he'll give us a taste of bhakti. Why does he have to give it? Because you can't make it happen in yourself. Not unlike Chittavritti Nirodha, you can make that happen by your willpower. That's what Chittavritti Nirodha practice is, willpower. What else is Nirodha? Dharana, mind wanders, bring it back. What's that? Willpower. Wanders, bring it back. Wanders, bring it back. Eventually dharana becomes dhyana, and then through into samadhi, it's all willpower. Oh, Ishvara Pranidhana is there too, but very underemphasized, understated, mostly willpower. But not bhakti. It's given by God. It's given by Bhagavan. And why does it have to be? Why can you not get it? Because bhakti controls God, the uncontrolled one. And so the only way that the uncontrolled one is going to put himself in that situation is when someone is completely and utterly pure and simply wants to serve. Then Bhagavan bestows bhakti. Because bhakti has that power over God. The gopis are completely controlled Krishna. Radha controls Krishna. She's the boss. So, so higher than that is the worship of his devotees. That's something to, in the Krishna tradition, taken very, very seriously. Serve the bhaktas. Do whatever you can to serve. You get a chance to serve the bhaktas some small little way, grab the moment. Intense love for the feet of the higher. Remember, the real bhaktas are not going to exploit anybody. They don't want anything. So, it's not that easy to serve bhaktas. Intense love for the feet of the highest Lord, with Madhusudana, enemy of the Madhusudana, is obtained through service to his bhaktas. And this love destroys all suffering. So if you are able to make friendship with real bhaktas, my friends, grab that opportunity. Make friends with bhaktas, those who are on the path of bhakti. Because they're not going to talk about anything else. They will inspire your journey. They have no other interest. They're always going to bring it back in some form or fashion. If you're not really interested in bhakti, you're going to think they're boring and monotonous. There he goes again, talking about Krishna. All right, Skanda. Where is sin to be found while looking at a person whose body bears the marks of Vishnu's conch and discus, right? Remember the marks that you put to, my teacher was always against all of this external display of your affiliation. He would say, just wear your Tulsi, that's it, nothing else. And we walk in, and the sacred clay and the Tulsi, that's it. Don't be walking around with all great big huge beads and all of the trinkets and all of that. It's just another ego trap. And there's sense in that. But anyway, this does talk about this. It's, we had this before. One of the 64 are the marks, right? So you get the chandan. Remember, I told you have the marks made of, a brass sort of stamp, and you stamp your body. That's kind of cool, actually. So but the marks of the conch and discus, who wears Tulsi blossoms on the head. I don't know about on the head. You wear it around your neck. It's called kanti mala, right? Kanti is the neck, and this is a mala. And it's made of Tulsi, my scraggly beards in a way. And whose limbs are smeared with gopi chandan, which will be prasadam from the puja. So in other words, looking at a Vaishnava purifies all sin. That basically, that's just a poetic way of saying that. First canto Bhagavatam. The homes of people become purified immediately by simply remembering devotees. Just thinking about the bhaktas, it purifies the mind and makes the heart hanker for their association. How much more so then is this true from acts of seeing, touching, washing the feet, and offering seats to devotees, just thinking about them? What to speak of if we actually have a chance of serving them? They come to your house, my friends, feed them, honor them. Bhaktas, real bhaktas, take the moment. They're not gonna rip you off. Real bhaktas don't want anything. O Arjuna, people who are devoted to me are not my real devotees, since my real devotees are those who are devoted to my devotees. How about that? Because you see people, they're not interested in the bhaktas, they are big shot devotees. They only want to go stand in front of the deity, go to the deity, go to the temples, and ignore all the bhaktas. Look at this verse, Adi Purana. They're not my real bhaktas. The real bhaktas are those who are the bhaktas of my bhaktas. Quite beautiful. Just be careful, don't get ripped off. Too many people wearing saffron these days and making a living out of it. The wise generally understood, trust your intelligence. Don't be foolish. Trust your heart. And, we have an intelligence, it's a piece of equipment that's given back to us by Bhagavan to use in all circumstances, including bhakti. So Vrindavan is full of people that put on a big show to make money, get some rupees, and all of that. You just trust your heart. You can tell that a mile off. Just offer namaha from a distance. That's not the kind of bhakti you want to associate with intimately in the spiritual sense. You do a namaha. That's it. No need to criticize. They're everywhere in Vrindavan. Increasingly, since nouveau riche India, now Delhi's become super rich. It's 2 hours away. All the rich Delhi wallahs want to build their ashrams because they want to invest some money and they want to have their ashram for piety. So they come down, they want to, they want to have the good things in this life, but they want to do a little something for the next life. And so with this huge influx of wealthy Delhi pilgrim tourists, so naturally the whole class of people prey on that. How is that not going to be the case? So they're called pandas, professional priests, professional tour guides. They just out to make money. So that's what I mean when I say be careful about, you can trust your heart, is what I'm saying. Right, 57, observing great festivals like Krishna Janmashtami and the festivals associated with Krishna, because this is the Krishna tradition, in the Padma Purana, and likewise in the other Ishwar traditions. O great king, great festivals are celebrated eternally in the realm of Hari. For the one who celebrates the great festivals of Hari in the temple. If you celebrate the festivals in the temple, then you go to the eternal realm of Hari. That's what the Padma is saying. Very, it's probably second most important Purana, Vishnu, after the Bhagavatam. So straight on to 58. Respect for the month of Kartik. This is the 4 months of the year of the rainy season, and it's the only time that wandering sadhus, who, if they're really, really following the life of the sadhu, are not supposed to stay in any place for more than 3 days, so as not to get attached. You'll be surprised how attachment works, my friends. You find yourself a nice banyan tree, you're there with your loincloth and your begging bowl and nothing else, and you find a nice banyan tree, and then some other sadhu comes along, you say, hey, get lost, mate, this is mine, I got here first. I'm going to tell you some of the things you see with the Baba. I live with the Babas, so you'd be quite surprised at some of the, human nature is human nature. So, but in the month of Kartik, the full month of the rainy season, even the wandering sadhus, at that time, they're allowed to stay for 4 months without moving, but they should, find a holy place and find an ashram, and then they can stay for the rainy season. So that's the month of Kartik, and bhaktas make vows, a bit like Lent, quite like Lent, in fact. Whatever your vows are going to be. Some do extreme fasting and so forth. So respect for the month of Kartik, Padma Purana. Right, here's the verse on the Padma. Just as Damodara is known by people as being affectionate to his devotees, so in a similar manner, this Kartika produces much benefit, even from a little effort. Just do a little vow, give up, chocolate for 4 months or whatever it is that even a little. It's highly efficacious from a purificatory point of view. And obviously for the mind has to be pure for Krishna, for love of God to manifest in it. Real love. It's like Patanjali. It's no good being 99% Nirodha, because if you're 99% Chittavritti Nirodha, well, what's the mind going to do? It's going to be focusing on the 1%. That 1% is going to agitate the mind. And then what's consciousness going to be focused on that? So 99% is commendable, but from a certain point of view, you're still getting nothing. You're still absorbed in the mind. You're not absorbed in the Svarupa, Vastanam. It's the same with Bhakti. Ultimately, 50-50 is great. 75-25, great. Making progress, but ultimately it's 100%. Right. Devotion to Hari is easily attained by people from serving Sri Damodara, another name of Krishna, in Mathura. Even just once in the month of Kartika. If you worship him once in that particular month, then devotion is easily attained. 59. All right, we're out of 64. Celebrating the day of Krishna's birth. That's the famous Janmashtami. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. Perhaps next time it comes around, you might want to visit a Hindu temple to get a sense of the festivities. It's probably one of the biggest religious occasions in India. It's trans-Indian. It's not, it's Krishna, but everybody. Same as Shivaratri. There's certain pan-Indian holy days, Ram Navami, Janmashtami, and Shivaratri probably being the three that are honored by all communities. But certainly Krishna Janmashtami, the Janma Ashtami, which is the birth. Ashtami means, I guess, the 8th. So it must have been something to do with the 8th, some astrological connection with the 8th, maybe the 8th day of the full moon, something like that. I never thought about it. But the Janmashtami. O Janarda, Lord of Vaikuntha, Krishna, tell us about the day that Devaki gave birth to you in Mathura, in the prison. We shall make a celebration for you on that day. May you be gracious to those who approach you by this means, O Keshava. This is one way of getting to Bhagavan. Why not? So many ways. How about celebrating his birthday? That seems like a fun thing to do. Make a great big feast. Do something special with your puja room. Go and buy some special flowers. How hard is that? Make a nice feast, and then the whole family sits and enjoys it after it's been offered. It doesn't sound like a massive tapas to me. It's a lot of feasting and kirtan on Janmashtami. Number 60, special love for serving the feet of the divine image. Adi Purana, one who holds always firmly to my name and always has a love for my service in great devotion, but never moksha. We've run into this a million times now, right? So name and the deity is given devotion. One who holds firmly to my name. Every morning you get up and you sit and you do your japa, whether your mind feels like it or not, my friends. And some days is a bad day. You just do it. Okay, mind wanders off, bring it back, wanders off, bring it back. No, don't beat yourself up. Just that tenacity is our offering to Bhagavan. Look, Bhagavan, look at my pathetic mind, but still I offer it to you. I'm trying. That catches the attention of Bhagavan. It's about love, It's like a little kid, a little kid goes, remember my daughter was tiny, she loved stones. She'd pick up little pebbles and come and offer them, and it was so important to her. But that, all parents have that experience. So that's bhakti. It's not jñāna. It's not about jñāna. It's not about anything other than love. So we sit and do our japa, and some mornings it's a disaster, but we do it anyway. And we tell Bhagavan, look at the mess I'm in this morning, but still I do it, and I'm offering it to you. That's love. What else is that? So, Adi Purana, just did it. 61, enjoying the meanings of the Srimad Bhagavata Purana. That's what we're doing. This entire thing is basically an exposition on the Bhagavata Purana, this Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. It's just kind of like an exegesis on the Bhagavata Purana. So, and he quotes the first canto. Oh, connoisseurs of beauty, rasa. Even after you've experienced the joy of moksha, many of the role models in the Bhagavatam, the text makes a point of identifying certain role models who've experienced Rūpa Gosvāmi. They've experienced moksha, they've attained the state beyond the gunas. There's so many ways of referring to it. Gunatita, Kaivalya, Nirvana, Moksha, Mukti. All of those states have attained it. But when they hear the stories of Krishna, they leave that state and they simply want to absorb the mind in the stories of Krishna. In other words, the text wants to say Bhagavan is something beyond that experience of the bliss, the prema, the rasa we're talking about is greater than any bliss of moksha. Right? We've had that so many times. So here's another example, yet again. Oh, connoisseurs of beauty, what's the most beautiful thing? I'm writing a book called In Defense of a God with Form. Why? How do you defend the idea that God is a form? Because God must be beautiful, my friends, if he's to be a perfect being. And what's beauty but form? So even after you've experienced the joy of moksha, they continually drink the rasa that is Bhagavatam. They've had their Atman. They could go into that state anytime they wanted. They know how to chittavritti naroda. They can enter samadhi like that in a minute. They don't want to. Why not? Because in that state, your ears aren't functioning. Your mind isn't functioning. Well, why do you want it to function? Because you want to hear and engage with this other being called Bhagavan. You don't want to be Swarupa Vasthanam, situated in your own Swarupa, your own nature. So even after you've experienced the joy of moksha, they continually drink the rasa. That's the experience. That is the Bhagavatam, which is, here it is, the ripened fruit. Do you remember I said that? Of the wishing tree of the Vedas. The Vedas give you anything you want. Anything you want. You want to go to the celestial realm, there's some Vedic ritual that will get you there. You want a son, a daughter, Vedic ritual. You want moksha, Vedanta. You want, whatever it is, siddhis, you want to walk on water, Patanjali. What you want to be God, you want to be Shiva, okay, Shivoham, whatever you want. So it's a wish fulfilling tree. But the text, obviously, the Bhagavatam says it's the ripe fruit of that. So it presents itself as the culmination, but obviously other traditions will do the same about their text. That oozes sweet nectar and was dropped to earth from the mouth of Shukadev. Shukadev got it from the Vyas. He was in the womb of his mother. He didn't even want to take, but he had a tiny bit of karma left, so he had to take. But he had to be conceived. But he burnt out that last bit of karma while he was in the womb. So now he had no reason to come out of the womb. There was no trigger. I don't know about biology. I'm not sure how biology works on this one. But 100 years, obviously the text is making a beautiful point. He's in the womb, poor old mum. And no reason to come out. He blissed out. And his mum was blissed out because she had this great being inside of her. She was walking around just in a state of bliss. And then he heard the Vyas expounding the Bhagavatam, Shuka. Then he has a reason to come out. He comes. So he's the son of Vyas. Beautiful stories. And then one day he's wondering, that one day he just leaves the house. He doesn't have any sense of father and home, and he's an enlightened being. He just wanders around in the forest. And even his dad, the great Vyas, is a little bit attached, goes running after him. Shuka, Shuka, where are you? Do you know the story of Shuka? And he walks past the river, and there's, part of the river where like you have men's toilets and men's, ladies, nowadays we have a convention, right? You go Central Park, there's a building, and gents on one side, ladies on the other, and you don't go into the ladies if you're a gent, and you don't go into the gents if you're a lady, right? It's just standard. So there's parts of the river that are like that. Even today in India, right? There's the ladies go there, the gents don't go there any more than they walk in a ladies' room. So he doesn't know this. He's wondering about this, and the text makes a point of saying how beautiful and gorgeous he is. And you wonder why he's an enlightened being. Why are they talking so much about his physical beauty? And it's just 16, right? So that's sort of physically perfect, sort of sensual age. And he walks past the river, and all the young maidens are naked in the river, and they see him, and they just, very conservative, right? And they wave, and he wanders on. And then Vyas is running after his son, Shuka, come back, come back. And when he gets to that part of the river, all the girls immediately scuttle out, and they cover themselves, and they grab their clothes, and they try to cover themselves. And Vyas sees this. He's a gnarly old sage. He's all gnarly, dreadlock beard, red eyes from all the tapas. He says to them, what, I'm Vyas. Do you know who I am? I'm Vyas. I'm old enough to be your grandfather. Why did you respond like that to me? When my son was a gorgeous male, you just waved and just kept playing, you greeted him, and then there's no concern at all. And I'm an old man. And they said, I love the story. They said, because you saw us as gendered beings. And so we responded as gendered beings and scuttled out and covered ourselves. Your son did not. He saw no gender. Isn't that beautiful? He just saw us as Atman, as pure Atman. We had no reason to therefore respond in a gendered manner. There's no subtle projection. Shuka then keeps wandering, and then he comes to a clearing in the forest where Krishna's grandnephew, Arjuna's grandson, is fasting to death. He's been cursed to die 7 days, and he feels blessed because now he knows he's going to die in 7 days. He's a great bhakta, sits there and assembles all the sages of the kingdom and says, tell me, what should a person do at the moment of death? What should we do with the mind? Which means all the time, because how do we know when we're going to die? And so the sages are, considering who best to answer the king's question. And Shuka, this naked 16-year-old, walks into the assembly, and they immediately just, like the girls in the river. And the girls were totally uneducated, totally, knew nothing about high-level spirituality, but they recognized. You don't have to. Animals recognize. It made a point of saying wherever he went, villagers and children followed him, just without knowing anything. They're just instantly attracted to his purity. So he wonders there instantly that even these great sages instantly recognize him. Let Shuka answer the king's question. And the whole Bhagavata Purana then is nothing other than an exchange between Shuka and the king. So all of this, first canto, second canto, third canto, that's all Shuka speaking to the king. And I'd love to do a workshop with you all on stories in the Bhagavatam, yoga stories. Maybe we'll do 2 workshops a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. So I'm contemplating either doing Vedanta Sutra, which is rather boring, but intellectually interesting, or stories in the Bhagavatam. So let me know which one you prefer. But the stories of the Bhagavatam are wonderful. And we'll pick, the yoga stories if you're interested sometime in September. Right now. So this is, and that's number 61. The ripened fruit of the wishing tree, right? That oozes the sweet nectar was dropped to earth in the mouth of Shukadev, right? What does that mean? Shuka is recounting the whole thing to Parikshit. Second canto. Shuka says, even though I am completely knowledgeable about Brahman without qualities, nirguna, I know the Atman, which is formless and qualityless and infinite and eternal, Satchidananda Brahman, nirguna, no qualities. So he'd attain that state. That is the goal of jñāna, that's the goal of Advaita, it's the goal of Patanjali, it's the goal of Sankhya and even Nyaya. I attained it, he says. Like I told you, many of the role models in the Bhagavatam exemplify this. Even though I'd attained it, Brahman without qualities, Krishna, God is full of qualities, has infinite qualities, beauty, omnipotence, omniscience. We can name a few. Even though I'd attained that state of Brahman without qualities, O royal sage, that's Parikshit, grandson of Arjuna, my heart was captured by the Leela of Krishna. Sucked out of his own Sarupe Vastanam state. This is how I came to study the Bhagavatam. My mind was attracted to it. I'm surprised there's not more on that one. 62. Association with devotees of the Lord who are of a similar temperament of oneself, right? This is sadhu sangha. Obviously, Patanjali, this is not part of Patanjali because Patanjali is a solitary practice. Obviously, if you're chittavritti nirodha, you want no distractions whatsoever, even from fellow practitioners. They're solitary. You look at the first expression of yoga in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Sage is sitting solitary in a cave in a nook by the river. Right there, it's solitary. But not bhakti, because you want to talk to, because it's an act, you're using the mind and senses, completely focused on Krishna, but you're using them and then you want to be with others so you can talk about Bhagavan and do Kirtan together, do puja together, celebrate festivities together. It's a social activity. Other than japa. Japa is the one practice that is bhakti and also Patanjali. So that's a shared, and even Patanjali acknowledges that japa is Ishvara, tasya vachikaha pranava. Association with devotees of the Lord of a similar temperament, first canto. We cannot compare even a moment of association with the Lord's bhaktas with heaven or moksha, heaven being the celestial realm. Not even a moment. Right? Moksha, not the Shuka says, we'd rather have a moment association with the bhaktas so that, meaning in that moment we'll be talking about Krishna or doing Kirtan or doing some Krishna-centric activity. So one moment rather than moksha, or to speak of a celestial realm. What need is there then even to speak of things desired by ordinary mortals like, Ben and Jerry ice cream? And in the Hari Bhakti Suddho, Suddhodhaya, something collapsed. Did you hear that? Okay, an illustration of chanting the names of the Lord. Oh, sorry, Hari Bhakti Suddhodhaya. Just as nearby objects are reflected in a crystal, right? You put a crystal. This is a very common example. It's used in all sorts of different ways. Even Patanjali uses it. For the mind that's colored by the reflection, this is asmita samadhi. What's asmita samadhi? I am. What kind of asmi is that then? It is the real asmi when the mind reflects Atman. And how on earth do you try to understand a mind reflecting something which is non-reflectable, right? It's metaphysically impossible to really get your mind around that one. So that when you can't get your mind around something, you use a metaphor. And what's the metaphor? The crystal reflecting something that's put in front of it that's distinct from it. So you get a crystal and you put a pot in front of it, the crystal reflects the pot. So this is used in all sorts of ways. Let's see how the Bhakti tradition uses it. Just as nearby objects are reflected in the crystal, so the qualities of the people a person associates with are reflected in that person. You absorb the qualities of those you make friends with, my friends. So that's why we seek to make friends with bhaktas, especially bhaktas who are more further along the path than we. And because they're further along the path, they're compassionate and they give their association. Normally, like if you're playing tennis, right, you want to play with someone better than you, but that person that's better than you doesn't want to play with you. If you're worse, that person wants to play with someone better than them, right? So they want to, because it's ego-based, so they want to pull themselves up. Not like that with bhakti. The great beings, they're not thinking, oh, this lowly little person, asking all these really simple, superficial, easy questions again and again. No, they delight in that. That's what makes them great, is in serving and sharing and transmitting. So therefore, for the development of one's own community, the wise person should associate only with his own kind. You associate with bhaktas. And the more you go along on the path, the less you're even able. I mean, you're kind to everybody, polite to everybody, but you're not going to hang out. You're going to find it very meaningless to hang out and just in conventional ways and just chit chat about this and that, or watch telly or whatever it is. You're just not going to be able to do it. Your mind is not going to relish it, and you just sooner or later you have to say something polite and leave. So you associate with your own kind. Right. Now 63, singing the names of the Lord. Second canto of the Bhagavatam. Kirtan, singing the names of Hari, O king. Remember, the king is sitting there fasting to death 7 days. Now we know a little bit about the story. I'm glad I told you the story, because now you know when this O king, O king, O king gets interjected, now you know why. It's just like in the Gita, Krishna and then Arjuna, and then, there's lots of philosophy, and every so often an Arjuna said, and you say, well, because Arjuna is receiving the teaching, so the king is receiving them. Parikshit, grandson of Arjuna, which makes him the grand nephew of Krishna, because Arjuna and Krishna are cousins. Singing the names of Hari has been determined to be the means and end for those who are indifferent to the world, desire moksha. You want moksha, and it's Nam. This is our lifeline to pull ourselves out, and everyone accepts this. This is not Krishna. This is Purana. The entire Puranic tradition accepts that in the age of Kali, in our present age, chanting, not even Patanjali says it, japa. And then he says, okay, you can focus on some other things, but he's not very enthusiastic about the other things. He gives a list. And he starts up with Ishvara. He has 6 or 7 verses, big long verses all about Ishvara. And then he says, okay, all right, va, 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 va. And he gives you 5 other vows, 2 or 3 words each one. Clearly not very enthusiastic, but he doesn't want to be a fanatic. And he wants to be, open-minded, and okay, fine. Concentrate on your breath if you want to, and so on. So everyone accepts this. Japa, my friends, is the path of meditation for this day and age. The repetition of the name of Hari. So if you're looking for a meditation practice, this is it. The Bhagavatam mentions 2 mantras, Om Namo Narayanaya. That's the mantra of the Iyengar tradition and Krishnamacharya. Number 1, that specifically mentions. And then it mentions Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It specifically mentions Bhagavate Vasudevaya is Krishna. And then Rupa and this tradition of Caitanya, then the famous Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That would be my own mantra, because I have taken Diksha in this lineage. But that mantra is not actually mentioned in the Bhagavata Purana. Very interesting. Not mentioned. So your theologians have to do a little bit of work explaining that. That's the theologians. They have a tough time. Radharani's not. We were one of our MA students is writing her MA thesis. Why is Radharani not even mentioned in the Bhagavata Purana? What are the theologians? How do they get out of that one? So a great topic. And why not? I do that. I work really hard to try and make this all seem plausible and appealing. And you've got to do something with your mind. That's a nice thing to do with your mind, as long as you're honest. And I thank Akademe for that, at least. I thank Akademe for making me academically rigorous and honest. So I think sometimes if you're in a tradition, you not necessarily intentionally, just because of lack of maybe. Because when you're in a tradition, you tend not to know very much about other traditions. And therefore, you assume your tradition is bhakti. or is Hinduism. And, academe has many, has certainly imparted me anyway, some gifts. And one of them is to be in a tradition. It never shook my faith in my tradition, although I had some wobbly moments, I got a minute, how does this fit in with archaeology? But it gives you integrity. And so therefore, if you've got a wobbly bit in your theology, just say it's a wobbly bit. What's wrong with that? Any metaphysic has wobbly bits. Big Bang theory, anything. Poke around, there's all kinds of anomalies and unexplained things, and scientists will acknowledge that if they have integrity. So why can't bhaktas have integrity and acknowledge their wobbly bits? By wobbly bits, I mean inconsistencies, things that don't have a philosophical basis, and even contradictions. Just call them out and move on. What's wrong with that? Adi Purana, Padma, right. Arjuna, I tell you this truthfully, I sell myself to the one who sings my names and does not leave me. My friends, get up every morning, do japa, moment of death, say to Krishna, hey, Bhagavan, remember this verse? Tattoo it on your arm, you're dying. And you go, hey, look, you said I sell myself to the one who sings my name and does not leave me. Bhagavan, I did it every day. Remind him. All right. Padma Purana. Bharat, a name of Pariksha because he's a descendant of Bharata. Oh, that's Padma Purana, sorry. The names of Hari reside eternally in the mouth of the person who has served Vasudeva for thousands of lifetimes. Maybe it takes thousands of lifetimes. Krishna says in the end of the Gita, through many, many births, he says that at the end of chapter 6. Thus purifying himself for many, many births. The yogi goes to the final destination, eventually, chapter 6. Let me read it to you. Through persevering effort and controlled mind, let's read the verse before it. Oh, someone who falls in the path and then doesn't quite make it, but has faith and tried hard, but got a bit wobbly. There we are. So got wobbly at the end, fell off the path, and then Arjuna says, "What happens to that person? He didn't make it," and he, So Krishna says, "Don't worry." He gets reborn and picks up against his will, and then he finishes by saying, "Through persevering effort and controlled mind, the yogin completely cleansed it of evil and perfected through many births." There it is. Aneka janma samsiddhau. Samsiddhas. Aneka, that just means not one. Eka, aneka. So how many does that mean? Who knows? Aneka, he's translated it as many. He goes to the supreme goal. So my friends, it may take lifetimes. So let's at least be grateful for whatever we manage to attain in this life, and just keep going and try to intensify and deepen our intention, our resolution, and follow some of these practices. Make friends with bhaktas. That's a great place to start. Padma. Krishna. The name Krishna is the famous wish-granting gem. This is a gem in the celestial realm, Chintamani, and that grants all wishes. There's a cow, there's a tree, and there's a gem, all of them wish-granting. It is the essential form of consciousness. In other words, it is Satchidananda Vigraha. It's the form of consciousness, not formless Brahman. It is Saguna Brahman, which means it's Krishna. Because Krishna is Saguna Brahman. It's Brahman with qualities. Not guna, not sattva, rajas, tamas guna. Guna just means qualities. In Sankhya, it means sattva, rajas, tamas, but it means different things in different places. In literature, it means a guna is a well-written verse. In Ayurveda, guna is something else again. So in Brahman, saguna, nirguna, it's got nothing to do with the Sankhya gunas. It means Brahman can be formless if that's what you want. That's your Atman, transpersonal, everything. Or that same Brahman can take assumed form, densified consciousness, Ghana Chaitana. So this name is form. It is Brahman in the form of sound. And Krishna is pure consciousness, no matter in God. It is perfectly whole, it's complete. It doesn't represent something outside of itself like normal language does. So this is pen. The word pen, it isn't the pen. If I say pen, I can't write with the word pen. I can't get that word and make it come out put symbols on a page with the word pen. I have to have the object pen. So the word is different from the object, but the name is not like that. It is Bhagavan. Perfectly whole, absolutely pure, eternally free. And it is identical to Krishna himself. Are we clear? It doesn't represent Krishna like normal language represents something beyond itself. It is Krishna manifesting out of grace in this form, which is Brahman. And the more the mind is purified, the more it can perceive that Brahman essence of the name. Because of this, the name and other aspects of Sri Krishna are not perceived by the ordinary senses. Look, I just said that. I didn't know this was coming. So here we have confirmation. If they're not, that name and other aspects like the form, you can't see it with your senses. Even in the 11th chapter, when Arjuna wants to see that horrific battlefield form, Krishna says, you can't see it with your ordinary eyes. Divya dadami te chakshus. Divya dadami te chakshus. I have to give you divine eyes. You got to have spiritual ocular equipment. It's the spiritual body, which we're going to encounter when we get to ragatmika bhakti. A spiritual form made of pure consciousness with eyes and ears and nose. Why? So that one can have sensually interact with God in variegated ways, infinitely variegated, rather than the static experience of Sat Chidananda, which is infinite, it's eternal, it's blissful, but it doesn't change. There's no change. By definition, it's unchanging. That state of the Atman is unchanging. Bhakti is the complete opposite. It's infinitely changing, infinitely variegated, infinite qualities, and therefore you need senses just to even begin to have some experience of the variegatedness through sight, through smell, through touch, through sound, through taste. These allow variegatedness in the experience of God, not prakritic, not made of the gunas, not made of prakriti, earth, water, fire, ether. No, consciousness, forms made of consciousness with senses made of pure condensed consciousness. So it is identical to Krishna. Because of this, the name and other aspects of Krishna, like form, are not perceived by the ordinary senses, which means you need these divine senses. When the tongue and other organs are eagerly engaged in service, worshipping the deities, serving the bhaktas, reading the scriptures, doing kirtan, there's all service. The name and other aspects of Sri Krishna appear there on their own. Wherever there is the service and bhaktas, the name is there automatically. And by the way, you can walk around all day with the name in your head like background music. When you've chanted a lot, my friends, that's like having the TV on in the background. Sometimes you check in on it, sometimes you don't. You get to a place where even if you're washing the dishes and your mind has to be thinking of, other things, that mantra is going on in your mind. And then every so often you check in when you want to surrender it to it in a more intimate, personal, immediate sort of way. But it can be playing there. I'm sure there are those amongst you right there that know what I'm talking about. An illustration of living in the blessed circle of Mathura 64. Why is he repeating this? Padma Purana. I don't know why he's repeating this. Well, we'll think about it another time. It doesn't matter. The greatest fruit available at others. Am I gone backwards? No. The greatest fruit available at other sacred sites is only moksha. Most places are associated with moksha traditions, so they give you moksha then. But devotion to Hari still sought after by those who have already attained moksha. Do you see this? Those who have attained moksha leave that. This came up in a conversation the other day. How do you compare the bliss of prema, love of God, with the bliss of Ananda, of the Atman, the Satchidananda Atman? How do you compare that with prema for Bhagavan? And in my understanding, So I'll let you know when it's me talking. I can't say I've seen this in a text, but I can't imagine it's not written somewhere. Those who experience prema have already attained moksha, so they can compare. They've attained moksha, left moksha, and gone on because they want prema, love of God. But those who have attained moksha have not necessarily attained prema. Not necessarily, have definitely not attained prema. Because prema requires we know that, it's one of the 64 principles. It requires disinterest in moksha. So if you've attained moksha, you can't compare. Even if you've done bhakti to attain moksha, like Patanjali, even if you've used bhakti as a prop, as a tool to attain bhakti, but that's not love. Remember, we had the discussion, jnāna mishrita bhakti, that bhakti mixed with the desire for moksha. You're using Bhagavan. You might do all the pujas, all the worship, read all the stories, focus the mind on Bhagavan, but your goal is your own Atman. Then that's what you get. So that's one way of thinking about this, and that's just my opinion. What wise person would not take refuge in Mathura? Remember Vrindavan, which gives pleasure, power, virtue to ordinary people, gives moksha to those seeking moksha, and gives devotion to those seeking devotion. You get what you want. You get what you want. Remember, moksha is not, it's only when moksha is rejected, it's rejected in the context of bhakti. If you want bhakti, you have to reject moksha. But moksha is not, for those who don't want bhakti, it's a very honorable goal. It's an amazing goal. You renounce the world. You've focused on an absolute truth. It may not be the ultimate absolute truth, but it is an absolute truth because you are absolutely the Atman. So the moksha traditions are honored, honorable. But only if one wants bhakti. This text wants to make the point. If you want moksha, take moksha. Loads of great jnana traditions will take you there. But if you want bhakti, real bhakti, pure bhakti, not using bhakti for moksha, but bhakti because you seek Bhagavan and you want a relationship with Bhagavan, for that type of bhakti, then one has to renounce moksha. And these role models don't renounce moksha not because of Vaidhi bhakti. They're raganugas. They renounce moksha because they've attained something. The minute they even just hear about Bhagavan, instantly they lose all interest in bhakti, in moksha. Right, we're done. Blessed is Mathura, which is superior even to Vaikuntha, which is actually the realm in Brahman where Vishnu resides. Saguna, remember Saguna, Brahman with form and qualities, including the very realms themselves where these relationships take place. They're called Vaikuntha, and there's infinite number of Vaikuntha dimensions. Devotion to Hari is produced simply by living here even for one day. Right. So now Rupa wraps it up. These last 5 practices have such extraordinary and incomprehensible power that absolute faith in them is unusual. Remember, he prioritized the first 10, but those are beginning. Those are the ones to get you going. You need a guru. There were 3 of them on the guru, and they even had that weird one about the banyan tree. So those are most important to start the path of bhakti. But this, he's making a point, are extraordinary and incomprehensible. Even a small connection with them can accomplish the production of bhav, foundational emotion, the type of emotion you're going to have with God, the type of love you're going to experience. Is it going to be a lover? Is it going to be God as a friend? Is it going to be God as a master? Is it going to be God as your dependent? These are bhavs. The last 5, 60 to 64, my friends, look at them again. 60 to 64, right? Let's wrap this up now. 60, special love for serving the feet of the divine image. Puja, worshipping a deity. Nothing stopping you getting a deity. Even a picture can be a deity. The Bhagavata says the deities can be made of 9 different things, but it could be, I bet you could make them out of anything. And it says, painting, marble, gold, gem, sand, mind stuff. Samskara, you have a deity in your mind, and a couple of others, right? So serving that, what does it mean? You get up in the morning, you make breakfast for your deity, you bathe your deity, you put your deity to bed at night, you don't eat anything unless it's offered to your deity. This is puja. And then you celebrate on festival days, you do something special. And of course, depending on how much time you have, but even if you have a regular job, you do your puja. I do my puja every morning, whatever happens. So, and you don't eat till you fed your deity. So this is one of the 5. Rupa says extraordinary potency that it's hard to find them. But what are the 5? Worshipping a deity. You can try it, my friends. You don't have to be intimidated. You don't have to be a South Indian priest living in a great big huge grandiose 12th century temple. You can have a humble shelf in your house that's your sacred space. You put your deity, you keep it clean, you put a little piece of marble with something special, a piece of silk, and offer your food in the morning. Nothing. Start off with a little fruit and water. Change the water every day, piece of fruit every day. How hard is that? Maybe a bit of incense. Start low, but whatever you start, maintain. Don't drop it. So you're not ready for anything too elaborate. Start with a change of water every day. Get a special little glass. Even go to a toy store and get a doll's house glass, something for your deity. Of course, in India, in Vrindavan, the whole marketplace sells nothing other than paraphernalia for pujas. So try it. Get a picture. How hard is it to find a shelf in your house? Well, if you can make a little table in the corner, better still. Whole room in your house, wonderful. But start somewhere. Right, number 1. Number 2, right? Deity worship. Number 1, the 5. Second of the 5. 6, enjoying the meanings of the Bhagavata Puranas. Read the text. Get a copy of the Bhagavata Purana. If you're lucky, you'll get it sent in the mail, won't you, Matthew? Bhagavan will send it. You don't even have to, you just have to win a lot. Matthew won a lottery. How about that? Bhagavan just comes right in through your letterbox. He won a lottery or something. Right. So, puja, Bhagavatam, number 2. 3. Singing the names of the Lord. That can be your japa, personal, private. Kirtan with a friend or 2. Put Krishna Das on, or or find some beautiful, Krishna bhaktas and just play it if you can't sing. Kirtan. It all goes into your mind, and it cleans the mind, and it plants seeds of affection. So that's the 3rd. What's the 4th? Living in the blessed circle of Mathura. Well, obviously that's not going to be possible for most of us. So you make your house into Mathura. You make your house into wherever. After all, Mathura is where Krishna is. So you just bring Krishna into your house through your mind. That's it. If you have a deity, then your house is Mathura then. And number 5. Well, that was number 5. Okay, these are the 5. So these last 5 practices have such extraordinary, incomprehensible power that absolute faith in them is unusual. But even a small connection with them, that's why I'm saying a little shelf in your house, that's a small connection with a little picture and a glass of water in the morning. How about that for a small connection? 20 minutes of japa, how about that? 20 minutes of Bhagavatam. Is that going to wreck your whole life? Even a small connection with them can accomplish the production of the beginnings of love of God, my friends. Bhav. Right, now he gives an illustration of the divine form. Oh, friend, if you have any desire to, I love this verse. I put this at the very end of my introduction of that Bhakti Yoga book, which was meant, by the way, to connect the Bhagavatam to the yoga community, in case you hadn't noticed. It's the same cover, everything the same. Well, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and then Bhakti Yoga. But anyway, the end of that introduction, I have this. This is so beautiful. Oh, friend, if you have any desire to enjoy the company of your relatives, then do not look at the body of Hari in the form of Govinda here in the Yamuna River at Keshi Ghat. This is all in Vrindavan. Don't look at him. He has an enchanting smile and stands in a position with 3 seductive bends. His wide eyes cast sidelong glances, and his tender lips are fixed on a flute and he's crowned with a bright peacock feather. Why shouldn't you look at him? Because if you ever desire to enjoy the company of your relatives, don't look at him. Why not? Because he'll steal your mind away and you won't be interested in anybody else. That's why. So if you have any desire to enjoy the company of your relatives, then do not look at the body of Hari in the form of Govinda. And so an illustration of the Bhagavatam. It appears, this is poetic verse, by the way, which is implied Dvani. I'll talk about that another day. It appears that the sounds of the verses of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavata Purana, right? 10th is where the story of Krishna is to be found. The other 9 books are to prepare us to encounter God in the 10th. So the other 9 books gives us, stories of previous incarnations, but stories of great bhaktas and what they did to prepare themselves to become pure bhaktas. What were their stories, their hagiographies, their, and some of them illustrates different parts of these 64 processes. So they're the exemplars, like the saints are in Catholicism, right? I mean, my sister would always, she's a Catholic, my sister would always say, you want to understand Catholicism, you got to read the lives of the saints. That's how you understand the teachings of Christ. That's how you do the exemplars. So it's the same with the bhakti stories. So we could do a workshop on that one day, if we want. It appears that the sounds of the verses of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam Purana have just become travelers into the pathways of your ears. So this is kavya. This is not philosophical language. This is poetic language. And obviously it gets butchered when it's put into English, but it's beautiful. So the verses are like travelers entering the pathways of your ears. The verses enter into your ears and sit in your mind. Oh, you fools. It must be because of this. The 10th book entering your mind. It must be because of this that you're now cursing dharma, cursing wealth, cursing pleasure, which yields great fortune. And you reject even moksha, which consists of great happiness. You're rejecting all of this. Why? How can you possibly, what other explanation could there be? Somebody might renounce dharma for some reason or other, or wealth for some reason, but who would renounce all of these, including moksha? Who else could possibly be doing this if that person had not been captured by the sounds of the verses of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, in other words, Krishna? There's no other explanation for somebody who is cursing. These things getting in the way. They're getting in the way of fixing. I have to do my dharma now, and when I'm doing my dharma, I have to pay attention to specifics of stopping at red lights. And when I do that, I for a moment I'm not thinking of my Bhagavan. You're cursing it, cursing wealth. I have to maintain it. I have to protect it. I have to figure out what to do. Cursing pleasure, just always such a disappointment. And forget about moksha. Who wants moksha? We've had that a million times. Who wants to swarupa vastanam when you can be absorbed in thinking and ultimately relationship with your beloved Bhagavan? So that's an illustration of the bhaktas. I do not know why the closer this person gets within the range of my 2 eyes. So now this is the poetic language here. You notice it's not Vedantic language. So there are 2 traditions in India. One, you could think of it this way. There's the jñāna traditions, Vedanta and all the sutras and the Dharma Shastras. And then there are the poetic traditions. So there's also epic. I'm not saying there's just 2. There's epic. But there's a poetic tradition, rich and beautiful and barely been transplanted to the West. But a rich poetic tradition. And the 10th book is exquisitely written in poetic excellence with, onomatopoeia and all of what they call alankar, the ornaments of writing. And I hope to be able to fit that into this lifetime, a study of the Kavya Shastra. Right, so here you see it, but you get a sense of it, right? The sounds of the 10th book are travelers into the pathways of, you wouldn't find that Vedanta Sutra, that kind of language. You think Patanjali would say that the sutra, the traveler. No, of course not. As you can see, it's a completely different tradition. Right. I do not know why the closer this person, but that doesn't mean it doesn't contain deepest spiritual knowledge. But especially bhakti. because bhakti is about the beauty of God. So you want your writing to be beautiful. Sutras is about nirodha. So you don't even want to say anything. You want to be as minimalistic as possible. The average size of a sutra is 6 words. You want a nirodha. Even your writing, you want a nirodha. There's 1,200 words in Patanjali, my friends. That's 2 pages, 12 font, double spaced. Entire Yoga Sutras, 1,200 words. No poetry there. But Bhagavan is so infinitely beautiful and sensually exquisite that you're right, that you, the poet describing Bhagavan, you are going to marshal your very best poetic literary training into writing your descriptions of God. Just like the Kirtan person is training for years on the tabla, on all the ragas, in order to sing exquisitely. The bhakti traditions are aesthetic traditions, and writing is no exception, but everything dedicated to Bhagavan. So the writing of the 10th book is in that genre. And of course, you can't translate that in any language. Very, very hard to translate poetry. You can translate philosophy, right? Easy. Get German philosophy, right? Great big long gedenken, gedunken, gedunken, you know, on and on. You can translate all of that easy enough, but not poetry. So I do not know why the closer this person gets within the range of my 2 eyes, the more my mind becomes unsatisfied with this home. I don't want to be in my home. I just want to be with Bhagavan. He's drenched with tears of joy. The hairs adorning his body stand on end in ecstasy. He's stumbling in ecstasy. His heart has blossomed wide open, and he's trembling with intense emotion. Is he talking about Krishna, or is he talking about Bhakta? Oh, he's a Bhakta. This is the Bhakta. The Bhakta. I do not know why, right? This person, the devotees of Krishna, this Bhakta, look at him. What was a Bhakta? Even seeing a bhakti, you think, what kind of a life do I have? Look at him. Look at him. He's drenched with tears of joy. The hairs adorning his body stand on end. He's stumbling in ecstasy. He can't even walk, doesn't know where he's going. His eyes are so full of tears. He's bumping into things. His heart has blossomed wide open. He's trembling within. Look at him. I'm sitting here having a cup of tea, watching the telly. What kind of a life is that? An illustration of the name. A previously unknown happiness has completely appeased my heart and mind. Ever since, cool songs. I don't think it means cool as in like cool dude. I'm not sure what the Sanskrit is, but it must be something like, well, we could look it up if we wanted to. A previously unknown happiness has complete. Actually, I'm interested now. What is this cool? Shanta, what is it? Shita means winter, cool. It means cool. In other words, I don't know what it means. It means makes the heart cool. A previously unknown happiness has completely appeased my heart and mind ever since cool songs sung by the player of the veena, proclaiming the names of Krishna, the destroyers of sins, has entered my ears, right? So the kirtan enters your ears, and this previously unknown happiness. Actually, I've seen this so many times. People coming into a kirtan. I bet some of you have seen this in your studios, and never been in a kirtan, and they sit and then all of a sudden they just have almost like, I wouldn't say out of the body experience, because that's not what it's about, but they feel ecstasy. They don't even know how to talk about or describe it, and afterwards they will say something like, "That was just amazing," or whatever their vernacular is. I bet you've all, if you have yoga studios, you've seen that with people. I wouldn't be surprised, and many of you have. What about Mathura? Remember, he's going over the last 5. Remember the last 5? So notice Mathura is Vrindavan. How is it that the magnificence of this Vrindavana, which is, by the way, Vrindavan is the forest of Vrinda, Tulsi. The word itself, remember, Tulsi is one of the 64 principles. Alex, you can grow Tulsi where you live. You're not up in New Jersey, mate. You have more sun. So it's really, Vrindavan is really the Vana of Vrinda. And Vrinda is the name of Tulsi. How is it that the magnificence of this Vrindavana, the Vana of Vrinda, the forest of Vrindavan, which is beautifully situated on the bank of the dark blue Yamuna river, right? So the Yamuna is, technically, the geologists will call it a branch of the Ganga, which separates from the Ganga I think right before Delhi, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere, maybe Haryana. Anyway, the Ganga splits off, and then it becomes the Yamuna, it flows to Vrindavan, then joins again at Allahabad. And that's called the Triveni, the coming together of the three. But there's only two. And then, of course, they've discovered the underground river that was, and it's very interesting, the Sarasvati, which is one of the main, all the other main rivers are still there, but where's the Sarasvati? Well, in the Indus Valley civilization, they found this enormous riverbed, and that's 3000 BCE. And those who are trying to argue for the accuracy of the historicality of the Mahabharata and the Puranas will say, well, the Puranas know about the Sarasvati, but it went dry 3000 BCE. So that means the Puranas must have been written before 3000 BCE. That's an argument that you'll see in, I know, and depending on what side of the fence you're on, that will either annoy you if you're, if you don't like the idea of people trying to find historical validity in the scripture. If you think that's a mistaken, like if you're a hardcore materialist, let's say, or if you're, somebody, well, let me not finish that. Okay. But so the Yamuna then is a branch of the Ganga. So it resounds with the buzzing of bumblebees attracted by the fresh blossoms of the Kadamba trees. Not anymore. Oh God, not anymore. It's all polluted. Put your toe in, you put your foot in, your toenail falls off. It's so polluted. All of the, I tell you what, there's not a drop of real Ganga water left in the Yamuna. Everything is recycled Delhi factory water. And the pilgrims come to Vrindavan, they don't know that. They take bath, they think it's the Yamuna, it's not. It's simply the recycled, all of that water that's siphoned off into agriculture and into factory production it's recycled sewage, and that recycled water then comes to Vrindavan today. There's a documentary on it. Go online. A good friend of mine, and she's done a documentary on the Yamuna River. Not a drop. That's the state of affairs today. But back then, it resounded with the buzzing of bumblebees, attracted by the fresh blossoms of the Kadamba trees and garnished with unlimited sweetness. Produces such an inexpressible emotion in my heart. How is it that this forest, how is it that Vrindavan produces such an inexpressible emotion in my heart? Because Krishna is non-different from Krishna, right? We've had Krishna as sound, we have Krishna as scripture, we have Krishna as deity, we have Krishna as Krishna, and we have Krishna as sacred place. It's non-different. But to see the very land of Krishna, because what we see with our material senses is bound by our material senses. But when our senses become purified and we're blessed with the vision of bhakti, that modern Vrindavan stuck between Delhi and Agra, you perceive it just like this. Spiritual Vrindavan. Just like the Advaitin will say, when you attain Brahman, jñāna, the world dissolves in sarvamidam kalu Brahman, and you will simply see all this is nothing other than Brahman. The Dvaitin will say, same kind of thing. That once your mind and that is pure of the kleshas and ignorance and ego and desire, then your perception of reality totally transforms. In this tradition, you don't want it to transform into impersonal Brahman. You want to have a vision of personal Brahman, and that is the spiritual river with all of the trappings of Vrindavan. The inconceivable power of these extraordinary things, I think he's talking about the 5 last ones, is such that it reveals the foundational bhav. Remember that your love is founded on something. So the maternal love of Krishna as a mother is founded on maternality, and the characteristic of that is protection. If you have that bhav, you actually think God needs your protection, just like a mother always has that protective feeling about her child, even if the child is grown up. Right, Alex? Doesn't your mom always sort of think protectively about you? It's the bhav. That's the foundational bhav. So the inconceivable power of these extraordinary things is such that and there are all these different bhavs. There's not just one way of loving God. Along with its object, that they're founded, the object is Krishna. They're all founded on Krishna. That's what makes it different from mundane raga, mundane desire, mundane states of mind. They're founded on Krishna, but that foundation has different flavors. For the purpose of turning around those who have turned away from the Lord. So in other words, those who have turned away from the Lord, you want to turn them back. A rather insignificant fruit was sometimes mentioned for some of the 64 practices. In other words, are we getting tired? Some of the 64 practices had this mundane fruit, like worship the banyan tree. Do you remember at the beginning, and you got something or other, it was some mundane thing. So he's saying, sometimes just to attract people, some mundane fruit is associated with some of these 64 practices, right? A rather insignificant fruit, meaning not bhakti, just something else. But their primary fruit, however, is rati. He has to explain why is it that some of the practices mention, some of the verses mention some kind of mundane result accruing. And he's a theologian. He has to iron out all inconsistencies. That's what theologians do. Inconsistencies, that's your dharma. You got to straighten them out. So he makes this little statement. Yeah, well, he acknowledges, sometimes some other fruit was associated with the 64, but really, it's really about love. The knowers of devotion do not accept ordinary prescribed ritual actions, non-bhakti actions like Vedic ritualism. They don't. That's a kind of bhakti to celestial beings, but the knowers of bhakti don't accept that as practices of bhakti. There are other, right? Bhakti is practices that are aimed at God. So they don't accept other kinds of ritual actions that are not connected to Bhagavan. They don't accept them as bhakti. They accept them as some cultural thing, but not as bhakti. Right, 11th canto. One should perform ordinary prescribed ritual actions until, right, this would, back then it would mean Vedic ritualism, basically. That's what they would be talking about. One can do this ordinary Vedic ritualism until one has developed an indifference towards them, or until there arises a faith for listening to my story. So until one bhakti develops, you do your dharma, and that part of which might be back then your Vedic ritualism to the celestial beings. Here, look at this one. In the beginning, jñāna and vairagya, knowledge and reality, are a little useful for entering the path of devotion. Nonetheless, these two are not accepted as practices of devotion. Look at that. Jnana and vairagya, they're useful, but they're not practices of devotion. They're not offered to God. I mean, they can be offered to God, but knowledge usually is knowledge of the Atman. Renunciation is renunciation of the world in order to realize the Atman. So in the beginning, they may be useful for entering the path. He's not rejecting them, but he's not recognizing them as real practices of bhakti. Notice that. The saints generally believe, look at this, my friends, look at this. The saints generally believe that knowledge and renunciation cause a hardening of the heart, Shiva, my dear, whereas devotion is said to be tender by nature. Too much knowledge, too much renunciation makes you hard, it makes you egotistical, it makes you stick your nose up at others, it makes you cranky, I tell you what, read the stories in any of the Puranas. When those sages come in from the forest after doing years of tapas, they're scary. Nobody messes with them. You give the water with the left hand instead of the right hand, they curse you, you become a frog for 10 lifetimes. They got serious anger management problems, some of those great rishis. Serious anger management problems. There's a story after story of these great tapasvins, Vashishta coming in with 10,000 disciples, and the poor old king is fasting for Ekadasi, and he has to break the fast at a certain time. Otherwise, he loses the effect of the fast of Ekadasi, and that's not good. But he hasn't fed the great sage yet, so he just takes one little grain to break fast, and then he goes to serve the saint and the 10,000 wonderful meal. But just because he took that one grain, the sage curses him. What kind of a that's pure. You know what that is? Suppressed desire, which transmogrifies into anger at the slightest provocation. All the ragas, all push down, nirodha. Knowledge and renunciation cause a hardening of the heart. Whereas devotion is said to be tender. When you really surrender to Bhagavan, you become soft and gentle and humble and playful. Think about it, my friends. This is also illustrated in the 11th canto. Therefore, knowledge and renunciation are generally, there's some exceptions. I mean, there's some amazing bhaktas who do some amazing knowledge. Generally, not the best means for the yogi who is full of devotion for me and whose mind is fixed on me. You don't want to be a hard, rigid, niroditaha character. You still follow the yamas and niyamas. He's going to say that in a minute. On the other hand, that which is attainable by means of knowledge and renunciation, you'll get that by devotion to me alone. By bhakti, you're going to get all that just as side effects, including you'll get moksha as side effects. You get an experience of the Atman. You just don't want to linger there. You get it. You pick it up. You could go there anytime you wanted to. You just don't want to. Like siddhis, you don't want the siddhis, but you get them. Illustrated 11th. By means of the practice of devotion, my devotee quickly obtains everything that is obtained by Vedic ritualism, tapas, knowledge, vairagya, renunciation, the 8 limbs, Ariel, Patanjali, our buddy Patanjali, Ashtanga. I gave 5 years of my life to Patanjali. Patanjali. There we are. It was all a ruse, just to open the door to bhakti. It wasn't really a ruse. It was amazing. From doing that project, I really got deep insight into the nature of the mind and samskara, and it was a great blessing. Anyway, all of this, look, Vedic ritual asceticism, knowledge, renunciation, 8 limbs, acts of charity, all good things, and even the best of all such practices. You get it all automatically from bhakti. If he desires it even a little, let's say you're not quite, you're not pure, you still have the desires. He will attain heaven, moksha, and even you'll get all these things by bhakti, right? Patanjali, bhakti gives you moksha. So there's Patanjali there. If he desires them even a little, if you want moksha, then even you'll get it through bhakti. So he's saying better to do bhakti. Bhakti, you'll get it all anyway. So just do bhakti. You get everything you want. Even my abode. Even the most intense passion for ordinary worldly objects automatically dissolves, my friend, for a person who experiences a taste for the worship of Hari. There's a lovely verse in the Gita where Krishna says that one gives up the objects of the senses, rasovarjam, but he gives up the objects, tapaha, vairagya, but the mind, the rasa, the taste remains. The rasa used in a mundane sense. The taste remains. You're still in the mind. Externally, you've given them up. Big ass renunciate, big old yogi, big tapasvin. Everybody does namaha, namaha. Everybody comes and gives you honor. Mind is still contemplating it. And then the Gita says, but for one who has seen the truth, then the taste evaporates. Exactly, they're here. Even the most intense passion for ordinary worldly objects, my friends, we're all trapped by them, dissolves for a person, this is usually, who experiences a taste for the worship of Hari. When a person who is not attached, right, that's a person who is. What about a person who's not attached to ordinary worldly objects, suitably engages, a person who's not attached, engages such objects as uses them in relationship with Krishna? That is called proper renunciation. You don't give up the objects, you give them to Krishna. If you like nice things, my friends, offer them to Krishna. I happen to love aesthetics personally. I love just, art. And so you make a beautiful temple room and you lavish marble and get custom made stuff in India and beautiful deities and handmade this and that. And it's still part of your life. So your aesthetic inclinations, but it's completely offered to Bhagavan. So let me read that again. When a person who's not attached to ordinary worldly objects, all right, the last verse says, if you are, well, you can get them. But if you're not attached to worldly objects, but you engage such objects and uses them in a relationship with Krishna, that is called proper renunciation, because you're not renouncing something. It doesn't belong to you. You give it to Bhagavan. It belongs to him anyway. So beautiful things belong to Bhagavan, marble and gems and jewels and silks. Look at Indian culture. Look at the beauty of look at the temples. That's an expression of that. And you can do that in your own home if you have aesthetic inclinations. You don't have to be a hard-hearted, cold, depressed renunciate. Offer it to your Bhagavan and make a beautiful space for your Bhagavan, and live in that cultural environment with beauty and everything. Just be attentive that you're not playing tricks with your own mind, that you really are offering it. Right. But when those who desire moksha renounce things that are associated with hurry, what are you renouncing? Everything's hurries. Mistakenly understanding them to be ordinary material objects, that is called worthless renunciation. In other words, if you renounce things that could be used, you renounce temples and you think, oh, it's all Maya, all this puja, all this Kirtan, all this Maya. That's worthless renunciation. If you desire moksha and you're renouncing things that are associated with Hari. What are things associated with Hari? Beautiful things that are offered to Hari. You get jnanis. You meet them up in Rishikesh and these places. Oh, all this puja, these temples, Maya. Worthless renunciation, says Rūpa. Even though it's been established by means of the previously stated definition of the highest devotion, that none of the ordinary prescribed ritual actions are practices of devotion, the rejection of the knowledge of the self as non-different from Brahman, and of worthless renunciation is repeated again for the sake of clarity. He's saying, I'm repeating myself. We've already discussed this. We've already said that when we're talking about highest devotion, not gimme devotion, none of the Vedic rituals are bhakti, because you're trying to get stuff from the gods. You rejected the knowledge of the self, to think the self is non-different from Brahman. Bhaktas reject that. They want difference. They want Bhagavan. They're dualists. And we've already discussed it, he says, but it's repeated again for the sake of clarity, meaning he really wants to emphasize these things. Why does he want to emphasize them? Because they were so common on the culture and the religious landscape of his day and still today. Right back then, people were doing Vedic ritualism, they were seeking the self, or they were doing great tapas, and those were some of the main acts of religiosity in the 16th century and for 2,000 years before that. See, that's why he has repeated again that they're all worthless from the point of view of bhakti. Here, all these big gurus. Devotion that is performed with assistance of great wealth and disciples and falls from the highest state due to the subsequent distance from the experience is not considered a practice of devotion. If you have all this wealth and disciples and you do bhakti, but these wealth and disciples creates a distance between you and Bhagavan. They get in the way. Too much, opulence, too much, so if that's the case, then that's not good either. Letting too many disciples, and you see, sincere people. I've seen so many sincere, real bhaktas, and then they become gurus, and then it just becomes another collection, like people collect wealth and they're never satisfied. You have 1 million, then you want 2, and all of a sudden you feel poor compared to billionaires, and you want 1 billion. By nature, desire never satisfies. It's the same when you become a guru, and I've seen so many sincere souls, and then slowly they become captured by not wealth, not any of these things, but they start to become captured by the numbers of disciples they have. And what kind of disciples? Oh, this one's a movie star, and I got this politician, and got this other famous person comes to my lectures, and trust me, I've seen so much of this. So he's saying falls from the highest state due to the subsequent distance from the experience. It causes a distance, and that's not considered a practice of bhakti. I'm really stressing that. What else? And you know what the footnote says? It takes it slightly different. The footnote says if you pay others to do, a bit like the Remember, the Protestant Reformation was to a great extent in response to the indulgences, where the church was selling expiation of sins, selling that. So, this author, David Haberman, takes this to mean if you pay others to do bhakti for you. So you get a rich person. I told you all the Delhi people, sometimes they come down from Delhi and they have their big marble ashrams and they pay professional kirtan people to do the kirtan. They don't necessarily, they might attend for a few minutes. So they pay others to do these acts. So that's how David Haberman takes this verse. So that's another way of reading it. 260. Even the special attributes, let me see. If we get to 270, we get to raganuga, which would be a great place to stop. We'll do it. Even the special attributes of those who are eligible for devotion, such as discrimination between the real and the unreal, right? He's referring to Advaita Vedanta here. Because one of the four principles of Advaita Vedanta is sat, asat, forget the Sanskrit, sat, asat, something, something. The distinction between, there's four things: mumuksha vahi, desire for liberation; vairagya, four principles of practice in Advaita Vedanta, Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, four of them. There's vairagya, there's sat, asat, this one here, discrimination between the viveka, I forget the language, discrimination between the real and the unreal, desire for liberation, and the fourth I can't remember. So he's saying they're also not determined to be practice of devotion. Why? Because they're seeking the Atman, not Bhagavan. Same reason we've had so many times. Here, yamas and niyamas. Where's the yamas and niyamas in all this? So central to Patanjali. What is that? What does Rūpa say? The yamas and niyamas, right? That the word is yama, and other forms of pure buffet, they come naturally to one attached to Krishna. So they're not classified as spiritual practices. They're a given. You don't have to mention them. It's like saying, don't kill babies, or don't go out and, blow up the subway. You don't have to say that. It's obvious. So he's saying these yamas and these niyamas, they come naturally to one attached to Krishna. So we don't need to list them as specific practices of devotion. They're just ground level stuff. And then he gives an illustration, skanda. Oh, hunter. Word said to a hunter who had just converted to bhakti. Maybe this was Narada's, maybe this is Valmiki, because Valmiki, the author of the Ramayana, he was a hunter in the past life. I don't know if that's this one, but that rings a bell. Oh, hunter, these virtues of yours, such as ahimsa, these yamas of yours, such as ahimsa, are not really strange. They're nothing special. Since those engaged, I wouldn't put strange here, I'll put special. Since those engaged in devotion to Hari never harm other beings, why do you need to mention it? So the yamas and niyamas are a given. Here, and in the same text, virtue says purity, internal, external, tapas, tranquility. They automatically attach themselves. They attach themselves to one desirous of serving Hari. Automatic. Depending upon one's own inclinations, devotion reaches its state of perfection. Okay, now he's going to summarize all this, and now we're going to get to Rag. Look, Raganuga's down here, hang in there, my friends. I think we have Kirtan tonight there. Now Raganuga, right? So we're going up to Vaidhi. So we'll finish this there's 4, and we are ready for Kirtan. And it's perfect, 7:54. Depending upon one's own inclination, bhakti reaches its state of perfection, either by means of any one of the 64, of the primary practice. You can do it just by japa, just by kirtan, or just by puja, or just by worshipping the holy place, or any one of them. Or it's a bit hard to think of worshipping the fig tree as being the one, but no matter. Or by means of several performed together, meaning you can't do all 64. For example, we can't live in Mathura, but that doesn't matter. Any one of them, my friends, any one of them. What more do we want? Any one of them. So now he gives an illustration of just one of them, a single primary practice. And he gives an illustration. And he gives a variety. All these obtain Krishna in the following manner. All these following people obtain Krishna by one. Parikshit by hearing. Shuka by praising. Remember, the whole Bhagavatam is Shuka speaking to Pariksha. So Pariksha got bhakti by hearing, Shuka by teaching, praising, Prahlad by remembering, Lakshmi by tending his feet, Prithu king by worshipping him, Akrura by honoring him, Hanuman by serving. Even the Krishna bhaktas can never find a better servant. When they want to talk about Dasya, they have to flip over to Ram, such as the greatness of Hanuman. They can't, there's no one in the Krishna tradition that comes close to Hanuman's service of Rama, and they all defer to Hanuman, the beloved Hanuman. I love it. Arjuna by friendship, Bali by completely. So these all attain pure bhakti by one. But now he gives an example of someone who attains bhakti by a whole bunch of them all together, right? Because remember, right? He's explaining this. Bhakti can come from any one of them or by means of several, right? Here's an example of several. King Ambarish, what were the several? He engaged his mind in the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in praising the virtues of Vaikuntha, his hands in cleaning Hari's temples, his ears in listening to the stories of Krishna, his eyes in seeing the images and shrines of Krishna, his limbs in embracing the bodies of the devotees of the Lord, his nose in smelling the fragrance of Tulsi, his tongue in eating prasadam that had been offered to Krishna, his feet in traveling to the holy places to do pilgrimage, his head in bowing to the feet of Krishna, his desire in serving the Lord, not in ordinary objects. So he did all of this out of love for the people devoted to Krishna, the highest reality. So he's an example of someone that attained bhakti through doing a whole bunch of maybe not all 64, but a good number of them. Finally, Vaidhi bhakti, remember, means rules and regulations. That you want bhakti, you gotta start. You don't have love you don't have love of God. You like the idea, it sounds grand, but you don't have it. You want it. You're inspired by the teachings. You're inspired by the stories of the great bhaktas. You want some of that. Where are you going to start? Vaidhi. You are honest enough with your own, humble enough to recognize your own inability to forge your own path. You just end up getting sidetracked by your mind again and again and again and again. The same old nonsense mind. So you understand that you can't make up your own path. You just end up falling back in where you started, back into your old desires pretty quickly. You can understand it. You're willing to, accept guidance, willing to follow in the footsteps of the great beings that went before you. And that's what Vaidhi Bhakti is. So you're following Rupa in this case. So Vaidhi Bhakti, which is guided by many important injunctions described in the scriptures, right? He's given scriptures in support of every single one of the 64. It's called Maryada Marga by some. There were two great Krishna traditions that emerged in the 16th century, the Gauḍīya Chaitanya Gauḍīya tradition and the Vallabha. That didn't come to the West so much. I'll tell you who was a Vallabhi, Shyamdas. Some of you may have heard of Shyamdas. What he was doing, he was fairly well known around here in the Northeast. He was one of the he was one of the only kind of Western, he was charismatic, was a powerful, yogi, charismatic sort of yogi. He was a bhakta initiated in the other important Krishna tradition, another lineage founded by the contemporary of Chaitanya. Actually, he didn't found it, his sons founded it, Vallabhacharya. Same thing, Krishna Leela. There are differences in theology. So Rupa is recognizing him, acknowledging him, and accepting him. So he's saying Vaidhi Bhakti, which is guided by the many important injunctions described in the scriptures, is called Maryada Marga by some, and the some here, if you look at the footnote, is Vallabh. Okay, contemporary of Caitanya Mahāprabhu. Now raganuga. Look at that, 8 o'clock on the dot. On the dot. How about that? And so now we change. Now we get into raganuga. Lakshmi Prabhu.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you're here.
I am.
Wonderful. We missed you last week.
I know. I missed being there.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you then. I don't think you need any introduction by now, Lakshmi, but I mean, in case there's a few newbies, Lakshmi, old friend, many decades ago, we lived in the same ashram together in Brooklyn, actually, when I first came to this country. And he was the temple president. Where are you, Lakshmi? I think if you talk, you'll come up to the top of my...
I'm here. I'm
definitely...
Okay, you got me?
Replace pin. Yes, and so great bhakta. You've been a bhakta for going on half a century.
It's my 50th year anniversary
of bhakti. Wonderful. And out of the 64, we just talked about the 64 processes of bhakti, and Rupa's saying any one of them can give you bhakti. Lakshmi, of course, practices many of them, but I would say that his forte is Kirtan. Since I knew him the very first day I got to New York City, and there he was temple president, and out we went in the streets to chant, and he was chanting. Do you remember, Lakshmi? And then you said, out of politeness, right? Because I was just a newbie in the ashram. Out of politeness, he said to me, go on, you chant for a bit. I've never chanted in the streets of New York City. No, I did it for about 30 seconds. Do you remember? And then you very politely said, well, that's very nice. Okay.
Next.
Next. Lakshmi Nrsimha, thank you for joining us. Over to you and Kirtan.
Thank you so much. So wonderful being with you, of course, as always. I listened to your previous class today while I was making the offering for my deities. So I had that association with you earlier today and about an hour of this class. So thank you so much for offering the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. Very deep, profound bhakti text. So now, as you said, 64 limbs of bhakti. Rūpa Gosvāmi also says of those 64, there's 5 most powerful. Chanting, sadhu sangha, swadhyaya, visiting the holy places, pilgrimage, and of course, deity worship. And of all the 5, most prominent is chanting. So we'll do a little kirtan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. I didn't know if I was talking to myself. I usually do.
It's all right. After a certain age, Lakshmi, it doesn't
It's
really
allowed,
matter.
right?
As long as it's, as long as the name is in there somewhere, then we're hanging in there. We're still hanging in there.
Yeah. People quite often see me chanting to myself, and they think I'm just an old man talking to himself. Okay. I think you like this kirtan in particular, so I'm going to chant it. Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala Nandula 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 Gopala Nandula Gopala Nandula Gopala Nandula Gopala Nandula Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala Nandula Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala Nandula Krishna Govinda Govinda, Gopala Nandula, Krishna Govinda, Govinda, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Nandula, Krishna Govinda, Govinda, 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 Gopala Nandula, 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 Gopal, 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 Gopala, Krishna Govinda, Govinda, Gopala Nandula, 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 Krishna Govinda, Govinda, Gopala Nandula, Krishna Govinda, Govinda, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Gopala, Gopala, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Gopal, 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 Krishna Govinda, Govinda, Gopala Nandulal, Krishna Govinda, Govinda, Gopala Nandulal, Gopala Nandulal, Gopala Nandulal, Gopala Nandulal, Gopala Nandula, Gopala Nandula, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hari Hari, Hare Rama, Hari Hari. Radhe 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 Shyam.
Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. Lakshmi, did you have to stop?
No.
Maybe our last session we can do we can do a really long one, and whoever wants to stay can stay. Would you be up for that?
Yeah, I would definitely go on as long as you want. I didn't know how the students were feeling, after a couple of hours of intense focus.
They're totally relieved, Lakshmi, to have a kirtan, to be taken to a place of the heart. But then students can just log off whenever they want.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you so much, as always. Wonderful. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Will you be free for us?
Yes, I'm definitely free.
Okay.
Next couple of weeks, whenever, I don't know when do you end?
Well, it depends. We'll just finish the text. At least 2 more sessions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm available. So
yeah, and we'll be actually looking at ragatmika, and Rūpa makes a point of the Gopi Bhavs. Perhaps you can tell us about the painting behind you next week, the rasa dance. So will you be sitting in the same place?
Yes.
So then we can zoom in, and maybe you can show us that rasa dance, because we'll be talking about that very thing.
All right. We love that.
Wonderful. And then you can give your perspective on your commentary on Rūpa.
Okay. Thank you.
Jai Shri Radhe Shyam, everybody.
Hari Hari.
Hari. Raganuga and ragatmika next week, and then what is bhav and what is prem, and that's where we're heading. What's all that work we did with Vaidhi. Where does it all end up? We'll be looking at that next week. Thank you so much for your interest in this text. It's amazing that we're able to read this, bring this Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu into the yoga community. I'm just utterly delighted. Have a good night.
Thank you, Acharya.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you.
1,000-fold. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank
Bye.
you.